Hey, you didn't send very many pictures.
I had trouble with my phone. It wouldn't attach it, start putting the picture and attach it.
Because I think I've only got one.
My wife got 20 of the same. I had trouble.
I didn't even notice it hadn't cleared. If they come to me with a question, then I'll just say I did it and move on. That's fine, yeah. Didn't even realize.
Dean is in the back, so it's going to be one of those meetings. Here it is.
Good morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for Thursday, October 25. Would the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. All are present. We do have a quorum. Would you join with me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Would ask those who are in attendance, if you have a noise-making device, if you could turn it to silent mode or off so as not to interfere with our electronic communications, as all of our meetings are streamed online. We do have a couple of recognitions to make this morning. We'll do so at this time. I was going to ask Jay to join me at the podium, but he's one jump ahead of me. So this morning we have a proclamation recognizing and honoring Community Planning Month. And I think it was back in 1978, the Board of County Commissioners established our Land Use and Planning Department. And since that time, we've had many, many people involved on a volunteer basis on the Planning Commission and on our zoning boards, making recommendations, working with planning staff, and making recommendations to the commission on land use issues. So that's the reason we're gathering here this morning. Jay Leipzig is Department Director for Planning. And Jay, I know you have some folks with you this morning. Chris Iliff, who's Chairman of the Johnson County Planning Commission. There are other members as well as zoning board members. So at the appropriate time, we'll ask them to come forward, and if they want to make any comments, that would be fine too. So the microphone is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Well, good morning, everybody. Jay Leipzig, Planning Director. Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for this opportunity to speak to you today and talk a little bit about planning. It's National Community Planning Month, which was established by the American Planning Association in 2006. And I believe historically, previously, the planning department established, or we recognized World Town Planning Day, which is also a pretty significant day. It's it's a worldwide planning effort, whereas today it's the National Planning Month in the United States through the American Planning Association. I wanted to recognize that we've got several people here that we could recognize. I might just in lieu of time, just announce the zoning boards and those members to stand up if they would, please. But we're excited about the opportunity to be here today. The Planning Association, which is our professional body, has over 15,000 members that are certified planners. We go through the certification process. You might have noticed the AICP after my name and after several of our staff's name. That's basically what that means, that we're credentialed and certified in planning. So it's a great effort. Planning is difficult because oftentimes we're weighing the responsibilities and the concerns of the public, general public and the greater good, along with the concerns of the property owner. And I think sometimes that's difficult. but we try to make it, do it in an organized fashion in the best way we can. And so it's always a interesting process because it goes through the regular planning process you go through using planning methods, and then there's the political process that many of this goes through as well. So I wanted to recognize that and say, certainly on behalf of the American Planning Association for recognizing Community Planning Month. Also, I wanted to mention, and in front of you is a cup that we have today. It's our 40th anniversary, as the chairman just said. Our department was established in 1978, and to guide land planning in Johnson County in an organized and efficient manner, and with organized development patterns. And 40 years is a long time, and I think that in itself is a huge step forward. It's something that I know I'm proud of. I'm sure you all are very proud of that. You look at the quality of life that we have in the county. A lot of that is due to good planning principles. I wanted to mention when we started the program, or started the department in 1978, we had 9 zoning boards along with the Planning Commission. And I can't imagine 9 zoning boards. We now have 3. So I was going to mention a few folks here. Today we have our Planning Commission, our chair, Chris Iliff, is here. Randy Hutchins, our vice chair, is here as well, I believe. But the 3 zoning boards we have, the Northwest Consolidated Zoning Board, the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board, and the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. So if I could have folks in the Northwest Board, if they would please stand. Is any that are here?
Big sixth.
We also have the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board members.
The big 3.
Oh, but I get to do it again.
And also the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board.
Big sixth.
And this group just met last evening, so it's a very active group. The zoning boards, in case some of the public may not be aware, the zoning boards actually review the planning applications and the site plans. The Planning Commission makes policy decisions, so it's a split process. Works very well. It's a very efficient process moving forward. I also wanted to mention, since the inception of the department, we've had 5 directors. We started out, the first director was John Pierce, and then Barry Hokinson, Roger Crow, and Dean Palos. And Mr. Palos is here somewhere in the audience as well. We've got great predecessors, and I certainly appreciate the leadership from not only the board and commissioners, but the prior directors as well, and kind of hiring staff and the great work of this department. I also wanted to mention our staff as well, and I apologize if I've missed somebody. I want to give a special thank you to Leslie Davis for all of her work and coordinating everything and the logistics. She's my right-hand person that kind of keeps me on track with everything. Also, Paul Greeley, our deputy director. Paul has about 31 years of experience in planning. It's a long time. One of the most knowledgeable people I've met. Diane Wicklund, our principal planner. Jeff Malott, our senior planner. Karen Miller, and also Sherry Cross, our zoning technician. We also have other staff that's here from building as well. Misty Nelson is here, our permit tech. Therese Laughlin, our code enforcement officer, and Mitch O'Laughlin, one of our building inspectors, is here as well. So with that, I kind of close and just say thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to talk a little bit about planning and what it means to us and this great county. Thank you.
Well, Jay, thank you very much. You identified the work of the zoning board, the planning commission, and the staff. And I think we all recognize that sometimes there are different viewpoints about land use issues that need to be resolved or bring together. And you all do a great job of that. I'm going to ask the zoning board members, planning commission members to come up and join in the photo op. Chris, zoning board members. Everybody? Yeah, everybody.
We'll do the photo first.
He'll do the comment first.
Okay, all right, that's good.
I'm going to ask Chris Iliff, who's chairman of the Planning Commission, if he'd like to make a comment.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission and the 3 consolidated zoning boards, it's really a pleasure to be here this morning. I think I started on the Aubrey Township Zoning Board sometime back in the 80s. And it's kind of lost in distant memory. And I've been on the Planning Commission since the 90s. So I've seen this department evolve. And evolve it has, and I think in a very, very positive way. But throughout that evolution, the two things that remained consistent were the diligent activities of the Zoning Board and the Planning Commission and the wonderful people on the staff that I've had the pleasure of working with for well over 30 years. We've always had great competence, and we could give tremendous confidence in the opinions that we were given by them, with the assistance of the legal department from time to time. Mr. Jarrett needs to be acknowledged, I think, because the planning staff does work with the legal staff very closely on these things. But the result of that is that areas of Johnson County that would otherwise have been developed in a disorderly and ultimately unproductive way have been brought into a zoning network that everyone can understand and work with, and we all benefit from the rules and the regulations that we have. Now, they've had to be changed over time, partly because circumstances changed, and partly because we had situations that were somewhat unworkable. The great thing is the flexibility of the Planning Commission and the planning staff to see when those needs need to be made and to make sure that they happened, and they have happened. So I'm just delighted and proud to be part of this planning day and the planning month, and thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. You know, I should add, all of these individuals serve as volunteers. There is no payment. Maybe you get a lunch or a dinner every now and then, I'm not sure. But so when you talk about 10, 15, 20 years of service in this regard, it really is dedicated service, and we thank you all very much. So we're going to take a couple of photos. We'll do this one, and then I'm going to ask the planning staff to come up and join us. So Jay, you're still in the photo. So we probably need to come in a little closer together. Okay, now stay in place, the planning staff who are here, and we'll even invite an alum. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Here, Jay, here's your. Next, I'm going to ask Mr. Alan Organ to join me at the podium. We have a proclamation in recognition of the coming U.S. Census, which will be in 2020, as I recall. And the Constitution requires this census. And Mr. Organ will tell us about the process and the involvement of Johnson County in that process. So I'll present this proclamation to you in recognition of that upcoming effort.
Thank you.
And please share any information with us.
I will. Thank you very much. Mr. Chairman, board, guests, it's my pleasure and privilege to receive this proclamation. I have been a Johnson County resident for the last 42 years, so I'm very proud to have my own county be the first in Kansas to become a partner with the 2020 census. This is the 24th census. It's required every 10 years, basically for two reasons: power and money. Power in terms of our representatives that we send to Washington, D.C., power in the representatives we send to the state. Also deals with our school districts. And the money is important. For every household in Johnson County that we don't count, we lose close to $39,000 between the two censuses. That comes back for Medicare, Medicaid, roads, a whole host of grants that come back to the counties, the cities, the state. So it's the CCC, or Complete Count Committee, that we have formed here in Johnson County will make an effort to identify those census tracts that are hard to count and make sure that we get as accurate a complete count on April 1st, 2020, so that we get what we deserve back to the county. So it's my pleasure again to help advise the CCC committee, but I'm very privileged because it's my own county. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for underscoring the importance of our residents participating in this census activity. And so it is critical in many respects, to the activity that we look forward to in the years to come. So I am sure there will be much more information available as the time grows closer for this census to take place. So thank you very much for being here and your work. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
At this time, we will turn to the public comment portion of our agenda. If there's anyone present who would like to address the commission on an item which does not later appear on the agenda, would invite you to the podium, state your name and address, limit your comments to 5 minutes, and we'll be glad to receive that information. Mr. Raby.
Good morning, Tom Raby, 17513 West 113th Street in Olathe. There's, over the last several years, or many years, I don't know, there's been more talk of redevelopment than raw development. And the Metcalf South complex has been replaced by a lumber yard, I understand, but that's still probably a good thing. And the Mission Mall is still undergoing study, is it? I don't know. Haven't been up there lately.
They're moving dirt now.
Oh, great, great.
And they're pouring slabs.
Because that one's been in flux for a long time, and it's sad. The Great Mall in Olathe was a great idea for some people, but it didn't even last 20 years, and it became a flat piece of land again recently. But now a developer from Utah has declared that he or she or they could turn that into a mixed purpose retail, residential, and commercial property that will be, you know, a beacon for other redevelopment. You know, I hope that's true. And hope all of this works out, because, you know, we went through beating our heads about the great Wizard of Oz theme park. and the great Rock Quarry soccer fields at 159th plus Street, somewhere in there, and a few other things that didn't work. So it's good to see these things. And then in traveling around the county, the medical centers in the county have opened satellites in lots of places. So there's going to be medical care for all of us if nothing else doesn't work, or if something else doesn't work, so we'll be able to get treatment. A little comment about the county commission. I mentioned before, I remember when it was 5 people and you rotated the chair, and it was a little bit unwieldy at times. And I consider all 7 of you guys my commissioner, recognizing that I can only vote for 2 of you, but all 7 of you are my commissioner. And I ask questions of 2 or 3 commissioners that are not my commissioner, quote unquote, and I usually get some satisfaction, and that works. Which brings me to a point that, did we ever consider at-large seats instead of totally districts? And I'm just throwing that out there. I'm not advocating it one way or the other. It's just something to think about, because not everybody thinks of the whole Board of Commissioners as their Board of Commissioners. They think of Commissioner Brown or Commissioner Ashcraft or Commissioner Schaefer as their particular commissioner, and they don't think of the board as an entity in its own right. But I will say it's got to be a pretty good gig, because there's quite a few people that want these seats. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, if there's no one else to be heard, the public comment portion of our agenda is concluded. Mr. Raby, to your one question, we'd have to go back and read the minutes of the Charter Commission, who put forward the structure of Johnson County government to find out an answer to that question. So those of us on the dais were not participating in that review board. I do have 2 or 3 notes for the record. I will be signing an attachment C, certification of non-federal match form for the Department of Health and Environment for the quarter July through September 2018 for outreach prevention and early intervention service. Also, an agreement with the City of Gardner for design of stormwater management project known as Santa Fe Street and Waverly Road stormwater improvement. And an administrative resolution number WD 18-039, enlarging the privately financed sewer district and provide for the assessments of all applicable fees, charges, and levies of the consolidated main sewer district in the vicinity of 133rd Street and South Greenwood Street. That concludes notes for the record. There are no consent agenda items. We're going to take item number 1 on the action agenda, then I'm going to bring up the last item on the agenda next. So would the clerk please read item number 1?
Consider approving the October 4th, 2018 business session minutes. Commissioner Klicka was absent that day.
Any corrections or additions to those minutes? If not, do I hear a motion to approve? Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move that we approve the October 4th, 2018 business session minutes.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the minutes as presented. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Abstain?
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. I'm going to bring item number 5 up to be considered next. It is a planning item, and in recognition and honor of those involved in the planning process this morning who are present, Mr. Leibs, would the clerk please read that item?
Item number 5, resolution number 088-18. Consider adopting certain amendments to the Johnson County zoning and subdivision regulations in accordance with the recent Planning Commission recommendations.
Mr. Leipzig.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig again. This item is before you. We talked about last week. This really encompasses a lot of work. We originally started talking about making some some changes in our subdivision regulations back in November and October of last year. We convened a subcommittee of the Planning Commission, chaired by Chairman Iliff, to look at how we can get more consistent development patterns throughout the county and consistent recommendations. That group began meeting in January of last year. They met 5 times, and then they, on June 26th, we had a joint meeting between the board and the Planning Commission. A lot of great comments and great discussions that evening, and so made some final improvements to the document. And then the Planning Commission has recommended the proposed changes at their August 28th, 2018 agenda. In your packet this morning, there's several items. We have the resolution from the board. There's also the Planning Commission recommendation, including the final report. Also, the Planning Commission meeting minutes were included with that, and also the Planning Commission resolution. Just to give you a quick overview again of the changes, they primarily concern Chapter 30 and 31 of our subdivision regulations. They essentially, in the rural districts, they're proposing allowing access onto Carnap roads, Type 1 roads. And we've had several items before you in recent months where we knew that was a problem. There was a lot of discussion about that as the county continues to grow and additional population. We knew we had to do something there, so the group kind of looked at that with your guidance as well. And so I think we've come up with a very good recommendation for you. Other item concerns potable water and providing water so that we do not require a connection with public water source, which is really more in keeping with rural planning stipulations anyway. So it's actually, this is some very good changes. I'm pleased to be part of this process, and I think it will really be a huge step forward for us. I did want to address Commissioner Ashcraft's question from last week. I started to answer your question about the length of time for the text amendments. I started to go there. I don't think I quite finished my thought, but a typical comprehensive plan generally has a lifespan of about 20 years, with subdivision regulations being part of that. I would say that these regulations will give us about probably 5 years or so. And it's something, as I said, it's very fluid, so we do need to kind of continually look at it and make sure that it's consistent and with our growth patterns and with the what you all are seeing and the needs of the constituents that are out there as well. With that, I'll entertain any questions you might have.
Jay, would you explain to us the requirements now in regards to access points?
Right now, in the rural districts, we do not allow entrance onto Type 1, 2, and 3 arterial roads. This stipulation, the changes would require in the rural zoning districts to have access onto Carnap roads, and so that it does not. It's not a panacea that will solve all of our problems. We still will have some issues coming forward occasionally. We still require that an interior street be built in the residential zoning districts, so it doesn't preclude that, but it does in the rural districts, does allow access with frontages of every 330 feet for Type 1s, 660 feet for Type 2s, and 1,320 feet for Type 3 Carnap roads.
So emphasize there is a different standard in rural or residential.
That is correct, sir.
Categories. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Other questions? Mr. Brown?
Just a comment about this item that this process took a fair amount of time to make sure that it was done well, and the timing at which it occurred and the dedication of the people who participated in it. I want to thank them and Planning Department and Jay specifically. These changes are not a a one-time fix for every possible scenario. So there may be times, and there certainly will be times, there will be one-off scenarios, but this goes to addressing a lot of the concerns that I heard from my constituents in the 6th District about concerns about trying to become compliant or get what they really wanted relative to what the ordinance is, how it read. And there are many people satisfied with the direction that this has gone, very pleased with how it's turned out. And as a representative of the people in my district, I want to tell you thank you for the effort, Jay, and to everybody who put time into attending the meetings, weighing in, and taking it seriously about modifying this so that we get in the right lane as much as possible. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klicka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I concur with all the comments expressed by Commissioner Brown. As many of you know, it's the issues that go on in your department, Jay, have become kind of a day-to-day issues for both Commissioner Brown and myself. Since we're impacted, our constituents, our public is definitely impacted by everything that you've done. A couple of notes. I do want to thank the staff for the expediency in moving this thing through. I know that's been a hot issue for a while. You got on it, and I appreciate you and the team for bringing it together. And to the boards, Chris and all the others, for kind of helping guide the staff through this process and getting this to it. So with that, Mr. Chairman, when we're ready, I'd be happy to make motion.
Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, we'll accept any public comment. Mr. Iliff.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the Board of County Commissioners. I'll be quite brief. For 16 or more years, we have had regulations that discouraged, limited, or prohibited driveways coming onto Carnap roads, arterial-type roads. And this was a very discouraging thing for a number of people in the county. I will tell you that I was part of the Planning Commission when those regulations were drafted and approved. And I thought we were doing the right thing, and perhaps at the time we were. The idea was that for safety purposes, we did not want multiple cuts into arterial roads where people could be coming and going out of driveways when high speeds were attained by the people on those roads. And we also thought that arterial lots, sometimes called piano key lots, were simply bad planning, that they would result in a limitation on good development, more intensive development when sewers came in and cities annexed the property. And we thought it was just a bad way to do things. I think the benefit of the subcommittee that was devised and looked at this, partly with the leadership, I'll have to give credit to Jason Meyer here. He showed us that piano key lots could later be converted into much more intensely developed subdivisions that were consistent with the sorts of developments that you would have with sewers and with annexation from the city. And also the safety issue was of paramount concern, and we went over this at length to make sure that there would be enough distance between driveways that the safety issue would be concerned. There's flexibility here, and if I'm sure you've all read it, but the summary report here, the Planning Commission final recommendations, which were primarily drafted by Karen Miller and are, I think, the consummate work of a public document written by an employee of the planning department. It's beautifully drafted. Anybody could read this and understand it, both as to what it means and what its significance is. So with that, it doesn't sound like there's going to be much objection, but I would recommend approval of the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? Yes.
Tim Gates, Agnes Gates Realty. I'm a land broker here in Johnson County. Came to work with my grandmother in 1994. She was a land broker in Johnson County from 58 to about 2005, passed away in 2008. We've done a lot of land sales in Johnson County and still do. I've got a lot of clients with very large tracts of ground that will benefit from these changes. We've been looking for these for a while. In full disclosure, I have a client that will be immediately impacted. I've spoke to Commissioner Brown a few months ago about it. It was in front of the board just recently, and we're sure happy to see this come along, because you don't see them here, but there are 200 and 300 and 400 acre tracts in southwest Johnson County, South Johnson County, and there's families that, just for estate purposes, want to try to divide that, and it's been, cost prohibitive with the last regulation. So we're in support of this, and I've worked with Dean and Paul and planning staff forever and ever, and Diane is my main contact, I'm sorry, and have had a very good relationship for many, many years. So glad to see this come along.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else? All right, if there's no one else to be heard, the item is back before the commission. A motion is in order. Mr. Klicka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just before I make the motion, I want to comment to Mr. Eilis. I was in your school with the hesitancy about having this access, but through the help of Jason and Commissioner Brown and others, I've kind of changed my position on it at the same time, and I appreciate all the guidance I had gotten on it. So, thank you. With that, I move to adopt resolution number 088-118, which approves certain amendments to the county's zoning and subdivision regulations as recommended by the Planning Commission and as more fully set forth within the resolution.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution as noted. Any further questions or comments? All right, there being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Again, thanks to all of those who were involved in this process. Good work, Jay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to agenda item number 2.
Resolution number 071-18, conduct a public hearing to receive comments on the proposed 2019 action plan with an estimated funding amount of $2,165,434, consisting of an estimated $1,080,000 in CDBG and $1,085,434 in home funds for housing and community development. Consider authorizing the county manager to execute related documents, and consider authorizing the submission of the 2019 action plan for housing and community development to the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development as recommended by the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee.
Public hearing is open. Ms. Schmidt.
Vicki Schmidt, Human Services. The 2019 action plan includes CDBG funding recommendations, project descriptions, and proposed outcomes. The plan covers the 5-year period. The plan covers year 5 of the 2015 through 19 consolidated plan approved by the BOCC in October 2014. Federal regulation and Johnson County's approved citizen participation plan require a 30-day public comment period and public hearing to be conducted on the proposed 2019 action plan prior to its final submission to HUD. On September 22, 2018, a public notice announcing the posting of the proposed plan and 30-day public comment period of September 23rd through October 22nd and the public hearing date of October 25th was published in the Olathe News and on the Johnson County Community Development website. The county followed the citizen participation plan approved by the BOCC to notify the public of this hearing and our interest in their comments. No written comments have been received to date. Human Services seeks your approval of the 2019 action plan as recommended by the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee.
Okay, questions of Ms. Schmidt? All right, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? Yes.
Good morning, Julie Brewer with United Community Services. We are representing in support of this item. A little background, UCS is the lead agency and provides project coordination for the Johnson County Continuum of Care on Homelessness, which has been supported in part by CDBG since 2003. The Continuum is made up of almost 50 organizations and county and city level departments committed to working together to address poverty and end homelessness here in Johnson County. Through this coalition's efforts, agencies work more effectively together, funds are leveraged for housing and supportive services, and as a result, people are at risk for or experiencing homelessness are able to regain and maintain stable housing. The U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development clearly defines the responsibilities of the nation's continuum of care. We are charged with developing and implementing a coordinated housing and service system that will end homelessness within the county's borders, with special priority given to homelessness among those who are veterans, who have experienced homelessness multiple times or for long periods of time, homelessness among families with children, and homelessness among youth and young adults. In the fall of 2017, we implemented a coordinated entry system to most efficiently and effectively connect those in a housing crisis with safe housing and prioritize the most vulnerable for limited permanent housing supports. To track our progress, we annually count the number of unsheltered and sheltered households experiencing homelessness on one night in the last 10 days of January. Our most recent count, January 2018, 168 persons were identified as homeless in Johnson County on one night, 38 or 29% more than in 2017. But 38 of the 168 were living in places not meant for human habitation, more than twice the number of unsheltered in the previous year's count. 3 of 5 heads of households surveyed reported that they had been physically, emotionally, or sexually abused by a family member, and 3 of 5 reported significant mental illness or PTSD. All the continuum of care members providing housing and services must enter data into a shared information system in order to track who enters and exits the homelessness system and what their needs are. This shared information system assists the COC in evaluating the effectiveness of the programs, improve outcomes for those served, and use aggregate data to identify gaps in services and housing options. The COC is also charged with putting systems in place to prevent households from becoming homeless, and if the loss of housing is unavoidable, quickly return them to permanent housing and provide wraparound services and supports they need to maintain that housing successfully. This COC has adopted a rapid rehousing strategy at multiple organizations, which has reduced the amount of time households are in shelter before becoming permanently housed again. Furthermore, the adoption of the Housing First practice has reduced the likelihood that households that experience barriers to available housing supports by establishing stable housing as the primary goal, and others issues such as adequate employment and income and treating mental illness as best and most successfully addressed after a household has been stably housed. COC mentions members coordinate with local governments and access existing mainstream resources to best serve their clients. Thus, we provide local input in consolidated plans with other jurisdictions. We consult with county government on its emergency solutions grant application and develop partnerships with other HUD-funded programs, such as local public housing authorities, to meet the needs of clients. For multiple years now, Johnson County Housing Services has partnered with the Safe Home and Catholic Charities to provide limited homelessness preference for households enrolled in their program that cannot be fully stabilized in a 6-month period of rental assistance. Once these households have received a housing choice voucher, staff from Safe Home and Catholic Charities continue to provide wraparound services for these clients as appropriate to assure that they maintain their housing successfully. Additionally, in 2018, Restart established a transitional living program in Johnson County for youth 18 to 21 years old who are homeless or at risk for homelessness. Finally, each year, UCS, as the lead COC agency, and COC members submit a competitive grant to HUD for resources to serve Johnson County residents. In 2017, more than $704,000 was awarded. These funds, which leverage additional resources, support local service providers offering permanent and transitional housing and related supportive services to households whose homelessness was not prevented. CDBG support of UCS work as the Johnson County Continuum of Care lead agency promotes both the goal of safe and stable housing for the community's most vulnerable households and a coordinated community response to poverty and homelessness. UCS is grateful for your continued support, effective strategies to assure safe and stable housing for all Johnson County residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Board, and everyone present today. My name is Danny DeLeon, and I work with Catholic Charities of Northeast Kansas. We have 2 emergency assistance centers here in Johnson County. We have one in Olathe and one in Overland Park. And I'm here today in support of this resolution. Over the past year, since January 1st, through our rental and utility assistance program for families and individuals in need who are in danger of eviction, who are currently homeless and looking for housing, or who are in danger of disconnect or are currently disconnected on utilities, we have served 431 families with over $228,000 worth of assistance from different federal and private grants that our agency has received. We also offer food pantry services, and we have served, between our 2 food pantries at both locations, we've served 4,459 families so far this year for a total of 11,520 visits, for a total of over $1 million worth of food and hygiene products that have been distributed. Through CDBG, we have been able to assist 51 families with emergency rental and utility assistance for a total so far of $14,752.54. So we're down to just the last little bit before the grant ends at the end of next month. I'd like to thank you for your continued support and for allowing us through the CDBG grant and your support to make an impact on the community and to continue serving our brothers and sisters in need. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Someone else.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing me to speak again. My name is Janelle Bowers. I'm with Friends of Johnson County Developmental Supports. We're a private nonprofit here in Johnson County that addresses affordable and accessible housing for those individuals, as well as basic needs. As always, I'm so excited to be here because I get to talk about what's important to me, which is making sure these people have someplace to live. Johnson County is a great community, and I think everybody in this room knows that, but because we're such a great, vibrant community, affordable housing is a bit of a, let's say, oxymoron. We can't find it. It doesn't exist here. And while that's great in some regards, that makes our tax base wonderful, it's a little bit disconcerting for the individuals we support. Those individuals have been diagnosed with a developmental disability that may be more familiar to people as Down syndrome, cerebral palsy, or an intellectual disability. Those individuals, by my statistics, when I look at everybody who rents from us, make about $1,100 a month. That's not easy to find a place to rent in Johnson County when the average rent is about $900 a month. Those individuals often have to pay a client obligation back to the state, which reduces their income to closer to $800 a month. When I look at individuals that come to us for special assistance, most of those individuals not living in a friend-zoned property are paying $600 a month. I know that's a lot of numbers, but I think if you add them up, or quite frankly, minus some numbers, that's not a lot to live on. That makes it very hard to buy groceries. It makes it very hard to pay dental bills. It makes it very hard to even go to a movie. So we exist to address that. We take houses, maybe not the cutest one, and if you saw our 13th house before or after, you can attest that was not cute. Actually, it was kind of scary. Now it's not, though. We were able to do that and then rent those units for $325 a month to the individual. So if you're making $800 a month or $900, $325 is affordable. We really try to aim for that 30% of your income. We also make sure those homes are accessible. So bathrooms, if you're in a wheelchair, you can get in our bathroom and you can use the facility. You can get down the hallways. You can go outside, both front and back, and enjoy your home. And you can be a part of a community, because communities that are diverse, typically able or otherwise, are better. And I think we all know that. So the exciting thing for us, this has been a rather, I was saying accidental, maybe we should say unexpected year. In the last year, and this is in great thanks to our years of support from Community Development Block Grant money, we received a $750,000 grant from FHL Bank of Topeka. That allowed us to go back to every single one of our homes and do additional renovations, although we are, let me be clear, not done. It also allowed us to purchase our 13th home, which we had some people refer to as Lucky 13. They weren't working on it. That allowed us to add 4 more individuals to our services, and we saved them money. And when we save these individual monies, I think what probably most people don't think about is this reduces their reliance on Section 8, which allows other people to access it. It reduces their reliance on food stamps, and it even reduces their reliance on our Special Assistance Fund. Our individuals very rarely have to come to us to help pay a medical bill or to help buy groceries because we've reduced their rent and their cost of living. Our request to Community Development Block Grant this year is actually to go into a house that we did in 2016 on Santa Fe that is impacted by the road work down there. There's no concrete driveway. It is a very, very large gravel driveway, but as Mark, who lives there, will tell you, it makes it very difficult for him to even go get the mail. So we'd like to use that money to put a concrete driveway in and to put some more ceiling lifts in and do the work that we do best. And we'll continue to do that because we're also in line for purchasing the 14th house. And because of a community service tax credit grant, we'll be doing 15 and 16 probably in 2020. And we're not going to stop until we've addressed affordable housing because we're resolute in doing that. So thank you for everything that you've done for us this year, last year, and all the years in the past, because that's what's made us successful and that's what's made people with disabilities successful in the community.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if there's no one else to be heard, are there questions from commissioners? Mr. Klicka?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Deputy County Manager Thompson, Director Collins, and Coordinator Schmidt, thank you. This package here definitely responds to issues that we've brought up in the past about focusing the funding of these projects in coordination or to coincide with the goals set up by the Commission. And this, I know homelessness has been a big issue for us. And to see how this is coming down, I'm really impressed, and I appreciate it. The one issue I ask for subsequent years as you look at this is, as we deal, I noticed that there's not a whole lot of money aside to scholarships for the YMCA after-school type programs in the parks. One of the problems with homelessness to a large extent are the burdens parents have in trying to deal and address kids' needs through the course of the day. And being up formally on a school board, even one of the more affluent school districts, there is a lot of cases where individuals and kids are falling through the cracks, and they're hesitant to bring anything forward. Whatever reasons, they're hesitant to express that concern or that need. And one way in dealing with this is through the scholarships and getting the after-school programs and various before whatever that allows parents more flexibility in trying to secure jobs and a work schedule. So to all of you, thank you for hearing what we've been saying. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Klicka, I think, hit on a very important point, and I echo his comments. In years past, Ms. Schmidt, I have from time to time questioned a couple of the expenditures. Streetlights, for one, I notice it's still in there, but it's much more reasonable compared to, as Mr. Klicka points out, some of our concerns with homelessness and the living arrangements, which is a greater emphasis, so I commend you for doing that and look forward to that. I did have a question, though, because when Ms. Brewer was speaking, it kind of brought it to my attention. I was looking at the OMB form that's included in this packet, and there's an insertion here about estimate the number and type of families that will benefit from the proposed activities. And under Ms. Brewer's USC, it says 1,000 people, but in the census there's only 168. So I'm assuming that's a cyclical figure, that so the estimate is 1,000 people over the year and not just.
Well, we have to keep in mind that HUD compels us as part of our work to do this time count. So that's
speak into the microphone, if you would.
So part of our requirements with HUD is we participate in the point-in-time count that happens nationally in the last 10 days of January. And so that 168 is not representative of the total population of those experiencing homelessness.
Right.
That is a snapshot in one night in the course of a year of how many people we find who are in the HUD definition of homelessness, which is a little bit different than, of course, school district's definition of homelessness,
Sure.
which falls under McKinney-Vento. That, over the last 5 years, has tracked at a pretty steady number of about 1,000 to 1,100 students amongst the 6 school districts who fall into that definition. So I think you have to look at the totality of the data and not just the snapshot data.
Right, and I agree. My concern wasn't that so much as I started looking at the comparisons, and on all of these OMB project summaries, there's some estimate of the number of people, but I saw nothing in here about the types of families that will benefit. Is that information somewhere else? And we don't have to discuss it now, but I would be interested in learning more about that, because if you look at just the number of people and the expenditures, there seems to be a wide variation, because for the paltry sum that Ms. Brewer is requesting, helping 1,000 people, you might argue, well, it would demand much more than that, but others are on a per-person basis is not as significant. So I'm just trying to understand how that thought process works, and we can discuss this
I've got an
offline.
answer, but, okay.
Unless you've got a 30-second
It's
summary.
a quick answer. All
Okay.
the beneficiaries listed in there, they have to meet the HUD published income guidelines. And so say somebody's getting the rental assistance, they may say they can get up to 300, so they may serve fewer clients than the nonprofits who come to the continuum of care and benefit from the work that UCS does in the community.
So it's an income guideline is what is driving this when it says types of families?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? If not, public hearing is closed. The item is back before the commission, and a motion would be in order. Mr. Osterhaus.
I'll move to approve and adopt resolution number 071-18, approving the proposed 2019 action plan for housing and community development with an estimated funding in the amount of $2,165,434 in CDBG and home funding, approving submission of the 2019 action plan to the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, and authorizing the county manager to execute related documents as recommended by the Housing and Community Development Advisory Committee.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution and related documents and activities. Any further questions or discussion? Being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 3, resolution number WD 18-036. Conduct a public hearing and consider authorizing funds to construct the Shawnee Mission Turkey Creek Sewer District Number 1, Contract 38 for Johnson County wastewater in an amount not to exceed $3,572,595, increasing the total project authorization to $3,750,595.
Public hearing is open. Ms. McCarrick.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioner. Susan Picaric with Wastewater. The Turkey Creek Interceptor is located along Turkey Creek and I-35. We've got a map up here to show you. If you look across the map here, we've got I-35. This is the interchange with I-635. If you can see the trees here, that's where Turkey Creek is running alongside I-35. The green lines represent our existing sewers, and so that existing sewer runs here from the south, just south of I-35, and it crosses Turkey Creek right there. We also have a sewer comes across from, I think that's Merriam there, comes across I-35 and connects into that Turkey Creek Interceptor. A section of the 42-inch Turkey Creek Interceptor was identified as a priority site during our recent inspections that were conducted as part of our asset management program and our stream crossing programs. In addition, we also identified that this area requires some capacity improvements throughout this section of the Turkey Creek sanitary sewer system. So as part of this project, we'll increase capacity as well as reduce the risk of the existing creek crossing. So right along here, we've got a creek crossing. Sewer runs right along, or right with the creek, I should say. And we've also got a crossing here at I-35 that we want to address. So let's see here. What we've got, I've already walked you through the existing sewer line. So what we're going to do is we'll be rerouting. See the red line? That represents one of the relocations of the existing sewer, and then this yellow line represents the other relocation. The blue that you see, that's the existing sewer, and we're going to abandon that then as part of the project. And I know Commissioner Brown asked last week how we would go about doing that. It's kind of a combination. So where we're crossing I-35 and where we cross the creek, we fill that with flowable fill, so concrete, flowing concrete. And then these other locations that are not crossing those areas will actually remove the pipe as part of that work. So the board authorized design funding in July of 2017. The design's completed. We bid the project. The request before you is for the construction phase funding to make improvements for the interceptor. Award of the contract is the next item on the agenda today. This request is for $3,572,595. This project was included in our most recent capital improvement plan program that we had presented to the board in May of this year. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Okay, thank you. This is a public hearing. Is there anyone present who would like to address the commission on this item? If there's no one to be heard, the public hearing is closed. Back before the commission, a motion would be in order. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I move that the board approve resolution number WD-18-036, authorizing funds for the construction of Shawnee Mission Turkey Creek Sewer District Number 1, Contract 38 for Johnson County wastewater in an amount not to exceed $3,572,595, increasing the total project authorization to $3,750,595.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve the resolution in regards to the Consolidated Main Sewer District Request Project. Any further questions or comments? There being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Next item.
Item number 4, invitation for bid number 2018-044. Consider authorizing a contract with Rodriguez Mechanical Contractors Incorporated to construct the Shawnee Mission Turkey Creek District Number 1 Contract 38 project in an amount not to exceed $2,908,750.
Ms. Picaric.
Good morning, Chairman and Commissioners. Susan Picaric again with wastewater. Funding for this request and the details of the project were discussed as part of the previous agenda item. I'm going to leave the map up here as part to talk through the construction project. This request, as read, is for the authorization of the contract to construct the improvements. Bids for the Turkey Creek Interceptor project were opened on August 30th. The project was advertised in the Olathe Daily News, and posted on the county's website as well as on IonWave, which is the county's electronic bidding site. It was also posted on Drexel Technologies Plan Room. A mandatory pre-bid conference was held with the interested bidders for the project on August 15th. 8 bids were received. Rodriguez Mechanical Contractors Incorporated was the low bidder at $2,908,750. The consulting engineer's opinion of probable cost was $2,763,000. HDR Engineers, the consulting engineer on the project, reviewed Rodriguez Mechanical's bid and their qualifications, and they do recommend awarding the contract to Rodriguez Mechanical. Johnson County wastewater staff agree with that recommendation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Questions? Mr. Ashcraft?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Picaric, Rodriguez Mechanical, have they done work for us before?
I'm not certain they've done work for us before, but HDR Engineers, our consulting engineer, they're familiar with the work.
Okay, very good. Of the 8 firms that did apply, or how many of them are new, have new interested parties. You have any sense of that? And if you don't know, maybe later you can just give me some
Okay, yeah,
feedback.
I recognize all the names here. Many of the ones that bid this project have done work for us before, and so.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. Ms. McCarrick, with the engineer estimate at 2.763 million, but a low cost, apparent low bidder at 2.908, there's a delta in there, and that's the low cost. So what nearly $1 million spread over 8 contractors, that can happen depending on how hungry they are and what they're trying to accomplish. But with an engineer estimate lower than the apparent low bidder,
Yeah.
do we have some sense of where the engineer's estimate was either low, or was there something that the engineer didn't account for that the contractors picked up on?
So it looks like the difference in the cost was associated with the 54-inch pipe. So this new pipe going in is 54 inches. The cost, the unit prices that we saw for the 54-inch pipe was kind of all over the place. So HDR engineers would have been using some of their most recent bids to develop their estimate and assign something for risk, because as you can imagine, working here in the interstate's a higher risk project for a contractor, or at least I would expect if I were a contractor to be a higher risk. But really it all came down to, it's about a 5% difference in the cost between the two, and it really all came down to the cost of that 54-inch pipe. The contractor, of course, they would have been working with the quotes that they would have received from the manufacturers. So.
And this is a bonded project?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right. Is there anyone present who would like to comment on this? Being no one to be heard, is back for the commission. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make it.
Mr. Schaefer.
Sure, thank you. I move that the Board of County Commissioners authorize a contract with Rodriguez Mechanical Contractors, Inc. to construct the Shawnee Mission Turkey Creek District 1 Contract 38 project in amount not to exceed $2,908,750 per invitation to bid number 2018-044.
Second. Right. Motion has been made and seconded to approve the awarding of the contract for the Turkey Creek District sewer project. Any further questions or comments? Being none, clerk, please call the roll.
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Eilert.
Aye. Motion carried. Are there any other items to be considered?
No, sir.
Turning to
Ms. Post-Oak Ferguson.
Ms. Post-Oak Ferguson.
Chairman and Commissioners, good morning. The first item is regarding contractor licensing, so I'll ask Jay Leipzig to come forward. This is planning day, apparently, because this is the third time Jay's at the podium this morning. The contractor licensing program is a point of pride for us, all of us, and he's here to talk about their education series. So, Jay?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. Jay Leipzig, Planning Department again. And I'm here to speak about contractor licensing. I just wanted to give a quick reminder about our fall seminar that is coming up next week, October 29th through November 2nd at the Overland Park Convention Center. And this is really it's a phenomenal program. We expect about 4,500 people here for this event. And certainly and want to encourage you, if you have a few minutes, if you want to stop by for lunch, we'd love to see you out there. I also wanted to introduce Samantha Nichols. Samantha is our Assistant Program Manager, and publicly thank Samantha for the work you've done on creating the brochure, the work you've been able to complete to get contractors. And this is really, we've got contractors coming from all over the country. We've got instructors coming from all over the country, and it really is a logistical phenomenon. Put it all together, but she does a very good job, and I really appreciate it. But just wanted to give you a quick reminder about that.
Okay, thank you. Well, again, I've been there a couple of times, and everybody does an outstanding job, and the program, I think, is recognized nationally, quite frankly. Mr. Brown?
Thank you, Chairman. As a member of the contractor license program and a person who was involved at the very inception of it, I take great pride in the contractor licensing program and the good work they do. There have been some changes there recently, and I wanted to thank both Jay and the entire staff at contractor licensing and getting this out on time, getting it pulled off, getting the instructors, because that is no easy task. I cannot even imagine how hard that is to get nailed down. And I will be in attendance on Monday morning at 8 a.m. to learn how to fail my next inspection. So.
Any other comments? All right, thank you very much.
Hard to outdo that one.
Chairman, the nenext item is regarding the city of Olathe. On November 6th, they will hold a public hearing regarding the old Great Mall site. Olathe 151st Street Star Bond Project, the one that Mr. Raby referred to earlier in his comments. This is for, the total project cost is $270,945,195, and total project incentives for 20 years, $69,500,000. And this is for 1 million square feet of mixed use and destination sporting entertainment uses. There's a large packet with a lot of information, and with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I appreciate the feasibility study included. I was just wondering if there was a similar feasibility study done 20 years ago when the Great Mall was proposed, and if anybody's ever looked at how that worked out. That's a rhetorical question. I wish them well. That's a massive project.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Anything else?
Chairman, can I ask one?
Mr. Brown?
Thank you. So it looks like to me, I don't know, quick math, about 11 or a little north of 11% in overall incentives on the overall project. How does that compare with other large projects? And do we know on this particular project, is this a Star Bond projection and project that covers the entire parcel that was the former, including the pieces that were never developed?
So.
What does this include? What is in this $271 million package?
Well, Justin's telling me there's a map in here, and I'm not sure if that answers the question. Justin, do you know? Okay. The map outlines the site area, but I still don't know if that fully answers your question. So we can certainly ask and get that back to you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Next item is the third quarter interim financial report. Ms. Highfield.
Good morning. Julie Highfield, Treasury and Financial Management. And I'd like to thank the commissioners for the opportunity to present the 2018 third quarter interim financial report. We bring you this report at the end of both the second and the third quarters. And the purpose is to let you know how we are performing against our budgets for both revenues and expenditures. A reminder that these are unaudited numbers. So in the packets that you received, there's a narrative document that has some language about a few highlights and also 4 main schedules that you'll see that I will just touch on the highlights of for you this morning. Another reminder that we do not discuss the Parks and Rec District in this report. So for the revenues, your main schedule is Schedule 1 in your packets, and we have 4 or 5 main categories of revenues that we talk about in there. We have taxes, investment interest, charges for services, and grants. And so for a total look at our revenues, we are tracking with our budgets very closely. In fact, just slightly above. Couple of things to mention are to remember that public safety sales tax number 3 is brand new for, we don't have a full year comparison, so you'll be seeing 9 months of data for 18, but there were only 4 months collected in 17. So keep that in mind when you're looking at those numbers. But sales tax as a category, if you take out that effect of the timing, is right on with its budget, just barely below 75% through 3 quarters, and a little bit more than $2 million ahead of last year, as projected by budget. The category of investment interest is well above its budget by about $2.7 million. So in checking with the cash manager, we have some conservative budgeting that was done, and the reason for the increase is rate hikes, 2 that were in 18 so far, and then another one that happened after the end of third quarter last year, so 3 total that are affecting these numbers. And also, the mix of the long-term and short-term, with the rate hikes, we invest further out. So that explains that increase in investment income. And those are my highlights for Schedule 1. Are there any questions about that?
Questions? Okay, Mr. Brown?
Yeah.
Just one quick one, and you probably said it, but I missed the detail. So the interest that we're accumulating, that's the upside for us of a rising interest rate environment. But what was the difference between the projection and the surplus, now the extra that you said 2.7 million, I believe?
So we're ahead of budget by 2.7 million. And I would say it's probably conservative budgeting is the reason for the difference. And you know, you can't anticipate how many rate hikes or when they'll come. And then the change in the mix between long-term and short-term affects it too.
Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question? All right. So moving on to expenditures. So Schedule 2 is, when we look at expenditures, we treat the general fund separately. There's another schedule I'll hit just in a moment of the other budgeted funds, but the general fund is our principal operating fund. And your Schedule 2 shows all the departments that make up the general fund. And if you go all the way to the bottom, through 3 quarters, we are at 68% of budget. I don't have any highlighted departments that have come out above their 75% allocation. So we don't have too much to say except that we're under budget, and so far so good.
Okay.
Any questions on the general fund?
No. Continue, please.
Okay. The other budgeted funds on Schedule 3 include our enterprise fund, special revenues. Those are agencies that may have their own dedicated mill levy. The debt service happens on that schedule, and internal service funds and projects. And those also are all under budget for their expenditures at 65%. Debt service has all been paid in September, so if you'll see that they are showing a high percentage, but that's to be expected. All those expenditures happen this quarter. So, are there questions on Schedule 3? Okay. Finally, a reminder of what Schedule 4 is. These are our cash balances that exist for discretionary use. You're familiar with the uses of these. The requests would come before you. And this is just for informational purposes to give you those actual balances at the end of 3 quarters. And so my comments are that the county's finances are in very good condition. I'd like to have something a little more interesting like the agencies could talk about, but I guess our purpose here is to let you know that finances are in order and you can continue these programs.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Turning to, are there any other items? Turning to commission comments, Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Chairman. I have just a few. Last evening, I attended the past presidents' dinner for the Home Builders Association of Kansas City and met with a lot of the past presidents there. And there was interest in what's going on in Johnson County, both in terms of government and our cities, and good conversation there. Would point out that at 10:30, so about 15 minutes ago, the ribbon cutting for the new Kansas driver's license office at 119th and Metcalf, Rosanna Square, took place. So that bigger office is officially opened, and now I think hopefully I can leave the Secretary of Revenue alone. It is 60 days until Christmas for those keeping track, shopping days, okay? And then also, go vote. Go vote. It's easy. I took my mother yesterday. It took 11 minutes from the time we pulled up to the door to the time we were back in the car at sunset. So go vote. It's easy. Thank you.
Mr. Ostrowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We had our Shawnee Trails Nominating Committee, where I serve as the chair of that board, and I wanted to give a shout out to Rick Lynn from our legal department and Paul Davis, although Paul couldn't attend, he was willing and wants to be part of that group in the future. So I want to thank both of them for stepping up. The last time I asked for volunteers, those two stepped up and doing some great things to help with the lives of young men and now women, as the Scouts have expanded, in our community. Some news from our JCDS governing board. Our Assistant Director, Matt Fletcher, is stepping down. So a little sadness, but the good news is he's going back to Interhab. And he made a really nice comment, I thought, about Johnson County government. He said, you know, there was one place that could take him away from Interhab, and that was JCDS and Johnson County government. And the one place that brought him back was Interhab, where he'll be the new executive director. But we want to thank him. He's done a lot of work with our Project Search and just overall great things for our IDD population. So we thank Matt for his commitment to JCDS. And that's all I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you. It's glad to be back. I just got back from a 12-day trip to Europe, visited two Shawnee sister cities in Erfurt, Germany, and Pitten, Belgium, and the level of programs and service that we received was actually outstanding. Had a couple of interesting visits, visited a high-tech pig farm, and this operation actually had the pigs in air-conditioned, concrete, specialized diet, and wastewater system, or wastewater collection was, for Susan, for an operation was something to behold. But the end product is, because of that, they're able to sell their pigs at about 80% over market value, and it's a very successful operation. In Belgium, visited a processing for fresh vegetables. They're really known for their vegetables, and the packaging is much more extensive than I've seen in America in regards to the preparation that's done in that. And spent a couple days in Amsterdam and rode a public bus yesterday, or I'm sorry, the day before, that was actually partially solar powered, and never seen that before. So, but glad to be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ashcraft.
Nothing, sir.
Mr. Clickham.
Mr. Chairman, just want to send out some kudos to the Election Commission and the staff. I also voted. I went in the first wave here on Monday up at Hilltop, and I think it was a contest who got through it as fast between you and I, Commissioner Brown. But it was smooth. The staff, the flow was just amazing up there at Hilltop, and I think Hilltop was one of the top producers for that day, and quite a few folks, I think over a couple thousand went through that facility on Monday. So hopefully it's all's going, everything I'm hearing right now, it's continuing real well.
Mr. Schaefer.
Nothing to add, sir.
Okay, well, again, following up on Mr. Brown's comment, congratulations to KDOR and those who listened to the issues that were identified by many of us, and to members of our delegation who also were involved in assisting us in this effort and bringing a third location for the Kansas Driver's License Office. Hopefully that will be a major step to alleviating some of the issues involved. On Monday, October 29th, there will be a Live Well, Age Well event that's sponsored by the Johnson County Parks and Recreation Department from 10 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. at the Marriott Hotel in Overland Park. And we have a committee of the whole meeting scheduled for 11 a.m. We're going to be a little shy of that. We do have the agenda review, so maybe 11:15 or so, we'll be able to start that committee of the whole meeting. That concludes our business session.
Executive session. We do have a
excuse me.
Executive session.
Executive session.
Mr. Chairman, to start on that, approximately 11:05 or something, or 11:10.
Yeah, that's fine, 11:10, something like that.
Thank you. I move that the board recess its open meeting and convene an executive session at approximately 11:10 a.m. for a period of 10 minutes for the purpose of receiving the advice of counsel and to preserve attorney-client privilege, and to reconvene an open session in this room at approximately 11:20 a.m. or as soon thereafter as the executive session may end.
Second.
Motion is made and seconded to approve the request for the executive session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Aye.
Commissioner Allen.
Aye.
Commissioner Klicka.
Aye.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Aye.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Yes.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
And Chairman Euler.
Aye. Motion carried. We are in recess from our regular business session, and we'll reconvene into open session following the executive committee. We will take a short break and come back for agenda review.
Thank you.
Good morning. At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of agenda review for next week's business session. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Here.
Commissioner
Linda?
Schaefer.
Yeah.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka. Commissioner Osterhaus is in the building. Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
And Chairman Eilert.
Here. We do have a quorum present. Would the clerk please read the proposed consent agenda items?
Item number 1, consider approving the October 11th, 2018 business session minutes. Item number 2, consider ratifying the chairman's appointment of Afam Ekamela to the REACH Kansas Community Advisory Committee through May 31st, 2021. Item number 3, consider appointing Andrew Ramos as the 3rd District Representative to the Southeast Consolidated Zoning Board through December 31st, 2021. Item number 4, consider appointing J.P. Smith as the 2nd District Representative to the Commission on Aging through August 31st, 2021. Item number 5, consider ratifying the chairman's appointment of Ann Malia to the Solid Waste Management Committee as a Citizens Organizational Representative through July 8th, 2020. Item number 6, consider ratifying the chairman's Solid Waste Management Committee reappointments of Scott Martin as the private industry representative and Raymond Manley as the general public representative through July 8th, 2021. Item number 7, consider reappointing Marcia H. Bailey and Janet Faska as the 1st District representatives to the Consolidated Fire District Number 2 through August 25th, 2021. And item number 8, consider authorizing the purchase of various pieces of fleet equipment for Johnson County wastewater from competitively solicited contracts in an amount not to exceed $632,020.68.
Any questions on items 1 through 7, the appointments? Chris, are you here? Do you want to make any comments on item number 8?
Yes, thank you. Chris Butler, Director of Fleet Services. The item before you, as explained, is for purchase of vehicles and equipment for Johnson County wastewater. These are planned purchases out of the wastewater operating budget. We've worked collaboratively with them to make sure opportunities for reductions and right sizing of equipment to the best possible units for them occurs. With that, I'll stand for questions.
Okay. Any questions? Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Butler, I know you've worked hard these last few years to better manage the fleet. You've made a lot of progress and changes. I would be interested, and we can discuss this offline, your comment about right-sizing the fleet in terms of how we make assessments in terms of owning equipment versus renting or having cooperative relationships with other governmental agencies to share equipment. I'd just be interested in kind of how you envision that and what steps we have taken versus what you'd like to take.
That's terrific. I would be glad to have that discussion with you. I'll reach out and make that happen.
Okay. Thank you. Any reason not to leave this on consent?
Consent.
No, all right, so noted. Turning to action items.
Thank you all.
Item.
Item number 9, resolution number 090-18, SW-SP-3426, GA. Consider request from Fire District Number 1 of Johnson County for a special permit to allow the continued use of an existing fire station and related site improvements on approximately 3 acres on property zone PEC 3, Planned Light Industrial Park District, located at 490 New Century Parkway.
Mr. Leipzig.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Jay Leipzig, Planning Department. This item in the Township of Gardner is from the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. That group met on September the 26th, 2018, and unanimously approved this item for a 672 square foot carport, essentially what started it, but it's actually for a special permit, which would be goes for the entirety of the project and in perpetuity. And staff is also recommending approval. And I did want to note that this staff report was written by Pamela Hayhouse, one of the planners that I neglected to introduce before, so I apologize. But please bring this item before you.
Okay, questions? Ms. Klicka.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I know we went through quite a process here to move public buildings and fire departments, and schools and all that to get them under a special permit designation. so they wouldn't have to fall into the other permit process. Is there a way to just automatically do that, or do we have to do it every time one of these things pop up, or is based on the prior schedule that it was on? We changed, as you know, Jay, we got away from having special use permits and things like that for public buildings and public purposes. And this falls under that.
Commissioner Klicka, I don't know the direct answer to your question, except that I do know, staff can certainly look into that. I do know that I believe this is the only one that we have in a public facility where there was a prior special use permit that expired, and so the special permit, yeah, this will be in the perpetuity for the life of the project.
And I'm questioning whether you need to bring them up in the future or just
Right.
do it. And since that was passed by this board a year or so ago, so
yep.
save
Well,
save
I
the
would
process.
caution about that. There are always issues, perhaps involving public safety and those kind of things that need to be reviewed and considered. But this is a planning item, so it will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 10, application number SW-PPFP-3429GA, plat exception numbers 11-1-18A, B, and C. Consider request from Michael Gometz, applicant landowner, for a preliminary and final plat to be known as White Deer Trails replat for one residential lot on 55 acres on property zoned RUR, Rural District, located at 14645 Kill Creek Road.
Mr. Leipzig.
Board, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Leipzig, the Planning Department. This item at 14645 Kill Creek Road, the applicant is Michael Gomnitz for the White Deer Trails replat. Essentially, this is a plat that has already existed, except they're doing a changing of the setback line. It's out of the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. That group met on September 26, 2018. They recommended unanimous approval of this item. Staff is also recommending approval, and with my comments.
Okay, this comes to us with approval from all involved. Any questions? All right, again, a planning action item will remain on action. Next item.
Item number 11, application number SW-PPFP-3430MC. Consider a request from Tim Gates, applicant, and Bird Hill LLC landowner for the preliminary and final plat approval for 3 residential lots to be known as Bernard Plat on approximately 255 acres zoned RUR, Rural District, located at 19195 County Line Road.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Jay Leipzig. This item for the preliminary and final plat is submitted by Tim Gates, was the applicant. I believe we spoke earlier this morning. This came out of the Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board. That group met on September 26, 2018. They did recommend unanimous approval of this item. Staff is formally recommending denial, but that is because it was not consistent with the zoning regulations that existed prior to just about an hour ago. So with that being said, staff certainly has no issue recommending approval of this item.
Okay, all right, thank you. Questions, Mr. Brown?
Quickly, but it is compliant now. With our new regulations just adopted, this is now would be compliant.
Yes, that is correct, sir.
Well, again, this is a planning item, so we'll remain on action. Are there any other items?
No, sir.
All right, that concludes our agenda review. We are adjourned from that activity. We just have a couple of minutes. We'll begin our executive session almost immediately, followed by committee of the whole meeting. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
those guys tell that. Paul did tell you I gave you a hard time.
At approximately 11:10 a.m., 11:20 a.m., the commission reconvened in open session. No action required, so we are adjourned from our regular business session. And as soon as we get ready, we'll go to the committee of the whole.
Thank you.
Careful one, it's gum or were there? No, okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Looking forward to a good report.
Yeah, these are the parcels here, or whatever.
Look at this thing.
If I wear just one, most of the time it's good. I do have a second and wear both of them. And I really, this is my second.
Wow. A new bottle.
My hearing aids too, They're getting pretty savvy.
You have it in now? Oh, it's back in here. Oh, I see. Wow, okay.
But nobody else sees it.
Amazing.
But it's lets you hear.
That's good. Good.
At this time, we'll call to order the Board of County Commissioners meeting for the purpose of our committee of the whole meeting to receive information in regards to the Johnson County Courthouse project. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Commissioner Schaefer.
Here.
Commissioner Allen.
Here.
Commissioner Klicka.
Here.
Commissioner Osterhaus.
Here.
Commissioner Ashcraft.
Here.
Commissioner Brown. And Chairman Eilert.
Here. Before we begin, there is no action required today.
Correct, Chairman Eilert. No actions required. This is an informational update.
Okay, thank you. Continue.
Okay. Good morning, Chairman Eilert and Commissioners. I'm Brad Reinhardt, Director of Facilities for Johnson County. We're here today to update you on the status of the courthouse project and transmit basic information regarding the design and our upcoming request for approval of the Phase 2 Guaranteed Maximum Price Contract Amendment with J. Dunn Construction for the balance of the design and construction of the new courthouse. The Phase 2 GMP is to be presented within the overall project budget and is tracking to the schedule originally set for the project. I'm joined at the table today by our project team consisting of Jeff Lane with Trainer HL to my right. Then is Dan Mueller, our project manager for facilities. Brian Chafee with Fentress Architects, and at the end is Kyle McQuiston with J. Dunn Construction. This is our agenda for today's presentation. I have a few opening remarks, and then I will turn it over to our design team to take you through the design of the new Johnson County Courthouse. Then J. Dunn will provide an update on the construction already in progress, and I will conclude with next steps associated with the overall project. We'll be glad to respond to questions at any time during the presentation or at the end if you prefer.
Okay.
In the past, we have shared information with you about the project delivery methodology we are implementing for this project. As you know, the design-build approach allows for design and construction to overlap. The specific design-build process used to ensure that the overall budget is met is a best value approach. After we presented the design concept to you in March of this year, the design team has worked to refine the overall design and worked extensively with J. Dunn, their trade partners, and the county to evaluate all design decisions. All design decisions were based upon project goals, the design criteria package, industry best practices, competitive bidding, and value ideas offered by the builder along with their trade partners. This interactive best value process has been undertaken for this project and has resulted in the final design that meets the project objectives and an overall Phase 1 and Phase 2 GMP that is within the project budget. The Phase 2 GMP of approximately $143 million combined with the Phase 1 GMP of just more than $32 million equals a total construction cost of $175 million. The physical attributes of the new courthouse have remained consistent. It will be a 7-story building with approximately 354,000 square feet. There will be dedicated space for 28 courtrooms upon opening of the new courthouse, with the building designed for conversion to 36 courtrooms in the future. I want to pause here for a moment to elaborate on the 28 courtrooms. Upon opening of the new courthouse, we are planning on 24 finished and fully operational courtrooms. One of these 24 will be a high-capacity courtroom that is finished but unassigned. It's on the 2nd floor, and it will be used to support the jury selection process, and it will be used for high-profile court cases as needed. There will be 2 additional courtrooms that will be partially finished and unassigned. They will have completed interior finishes, including millwork, such as the judge's bench, jury box, and gallery area, but they will not be fit out with technology or other loose or freestanding furniture. Should a new judge be appointed to Johnson County shortly after opening, these 2 partially finished courtrooms could be quickly set up for use. And finally, 2 courtroom spaces will be unfinished, including a 2nd high-capacity courtroom on the 2nd floor and a family courtroom on the 7th floor. We're still planning for the, one more comment to make regarding that. The 28 courtroom number does not include 3 court trustee hearing rooms that will be completed upon opening. And then we're still planning for the tunnel connection across Santa Fe in spring of 2019, and as you're aware, construction began in July. We're planning substantial completion in August of 2020. Opening is planned for January of 2021, and that will be followed quickly by demolition and development of the county square.
You have a question, Brad?
Mr. Reinhardt, question about the large courtroom for higher profile cases. Do we have a section set aside for our media presence that are normally there for those? Is that, I'm seeing some head shakes.
I might defer to our design team. So yes, we do have.
Okay.
We actually have created a space, a meeting room space, just off of that area on that same floor that media can actually congregate and come into. And it'll actually be tied to the AV system, so they can actually watch the proceeding in there in lieu of coming into the courthouse or courtroom.
Okay. I was just curious because I know a lot of times there's cameras and microphones and electronic setup for that. So. Thank you.
Did you have a question?
I do. On the I think you said 2 courtrooms that would be ready for a relatively quick conversion if needed. What level of finish will those rooms be taken to?
They'll be finished carpet, millwork, judges box, judge's bench, sorry, jury box, and the gallery area will all be finished out. So those are, like the jury chairs are fixed to the floor, so those will be provided, but the attorney's tables and chairs, other loose furnishings will not be provided, as well as the technology. The
FF&E and computerization. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, continue.
All right. I think next one. Shortly after we engaged the design-build team in late 2017, we held a partnering session to bring the entire project team together. The purpose was to review project goals, set expectations, and gain commitment for success. Participants included the county manager's office, the public information office, and facilities management from the county. The city of Olathe participated along with our key consultants, Newmark Grubb Zimmer and CGL companies. And of course, it included our design build team, J. Dunn Construction, Trainer HL, and Fentress Architects. This set the foundation for how we would work together and successfully arrive at this point in the process. It's also important that I acknowledge and thank the many county stakeholders, including the 10th Judicial District Court, District Attorney, Sheriff's Office, Court Administration, Court Clerk, Court Trustee, Justice Information Management, the Law Library, Emergency Management and Communications, Corrections, and others from Facilities Management. Together, this group provided innovative ideas and solutions. They were flexible and accommodating with meeting schedules and deadlines, and they participated and were engaged with full attention. We're very appreciative of their time and their efforts with regards to this project. Our project goals have remained consistent from the beginning of this project, and we've shared these with you in previous presentations. For me, first and foremost is resolution of the existing courthouse failings, including accessibility, security, and circulation. Additional project goals include a high-functioning, public service-oriented courthouse, a high-performing 75-year building, including high-performance building envelope and very efficient mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems, state-of-the-art technology that supports judicial innovation, and finally, we want a building that is an example of exemplary civic architecture recognized as an instrument of justice and service appropriate to the county and the taxpayers. And with that, I'll turn that over to
Brad,
Jeff.
would you speak to the LEED certification issue, just to remind everybody?
Yes, we are designing to LEED standards, but we are not pursuing certification. So that's our standard practice.
What standard? Could you give us an idea? I know there's an extraordinary cost involved with a project this size. Could you explain that?
The costs or
the certification.
So, I'm sorry, Chairman, could you repeat the question?
I'm suggesting you explain to us the fact that we will build to a LEED standard, but we're not going to be certified.
Correct.
And the reason for that is the cost of that certification, as I understand.
Yes. And the desire. So energy efficiency is our standard practice, and you can achieve. You get lots of points for LEED certification for deploying energy efficient systems, and we're doing that. A very efficient building envelope that's very energy efficient. There'll be other aspects I think we will speak to as well. Commissioning is a standard practice that we deploy for all of our projects. So those are all things that count for LEED and are our standard practice, but we're not pursuing the certification.
Well, again, my question had to do with the cost of that certification process itself, which could be several $100,000 on a building of this size. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Mr. Brown?
To what standard on LEEDs is this being built to?
Well, if we were to certify, we believe we would achieve silver, LEED silver.
Thank you.
Mr. Allen?
Just a quick question on the status of handicap parking being worked out with the city of Olathe, the status of that.
I don't know if do we have, I'll let Jeff or the design team maybe speak to that.
So we've continued to work with the city on that, and we will continue to do that. We've come to a thought of where the drop-off will be and those types of things. We do have accessible parking in the north parking lot area, and we're still continuing to work with the city on creating some spaces that will work together for both those buildings that will be closer.
Thank you.
Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Reinhardt, in the past, we've talked a little bit about the flexibility in the space. Is that incorporated in these project goals, but just kind of defined differently as the courts and the judiciary process matures with technology and so forth? Is that included in here?
Yeah, I believe it would be included in the high functioning
public service-oriented courthouse?
Yeah, that would be for staff. I mean, we're very focused on the judicial and all the other employees of the courts. And so we want it to be very flexible and efficient for their needs as well as the public needs.
But also the changes in the administration of justice using technology and so forth, I mean, that's included in this?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, please continue. Thank you. So one of the goals that Brad did talk a little bit about there at the tail end is that exemplary civic architecture and national recognition as an instrument of service and justice and service. So this building has been developed with a strong civic image that expresses the function of this courts. You can see the pedestrian plaza that we've got right there off of Santa Fe Street that continues the Cherry Street spine that we've been talking about, and I'll talk a little bit more about as we go through the master plan. Also, you'll see there to the left of that plaza area is the raised entry element, which establishes the importance and the decorum of the function of the courts. So it creates a space and creates a civic nature of where we're entering the building, and that this is a civic piece of architecture. We've also utilized durable materials. We'll talk a little about those in a little bit, but the one that we have used as kind of a piece of what Kansas is about is Kansas limestone. And we used that along the ribbon wall. And the ribbon wall is that civic piece of architecture on the east portion of the podium with the mosaic glass patterning that goes along there to let the natural light into the public area. We've used that limestone there, the Kansas limestone there, for a reason of permanence, a reason of providing something that fits within the community here at Johnson County as well as the state. We've also have, you can see there, the glass, large glass curtain wall along the east as well, that create the transparency of this building to the public. Also there is the public corridor space, and then you can view in and out from the courts into that space. The other pieces of material we've used is an architectural precast and metal panels. The overall image that you see here is an image that is welcoming, dignified, and an approach to civic architecture. Mr. Ashcraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to make sure the city of Olathe has been fully consulted in terms of the design features, and they're comfortable, they're supportive of this concept. I just want to make sure that that's been fully recognized and fully vetted.
Correct. So we've actually gone through a lot of different meetings with the city through their development plan, as well as the county has met with them once a month to bring them up to date on this project.
Excellent. And one last question, Mr. Chairman. I'm from Oklahoma City, so I want to make sure there are security features in place on this facility, if you understand what I'm asking.
Yes, and I'll talk about those a little bit here as we relate to the site. The other piece, though, to your point, sir, is that we have one point of entry for public and staff coming to this building, and that was that image right there on the front. So everybody has to come into that area, and then Brian will talk a little bit more about how we handle the security within the building.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Mr. Allen.
Next slide answered half my question on the monument sign. It looks like if you're going eastbound on Santa Fe, is there also going to be signage to the west of the building?
So we've actually looked at multiple places for signage, and yes, we do plan to have signage along Kansas Avenue as well.
Thank you.
Will it have a logo on it?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Actually, that's a very good question.
Next item. All righty, thank you. So as we showed you last time, we worked through the master plan, and we've developed that a little bit further, but we start here at the master plan as it relates to the administration building the county has. To the green space and County Square there to the north of the administration building where the current courthouse is. It continues that Cherry Street across Santa Fe over to the court site.
that then allows us to then move to the public and staff parking area to the north of the courthouse. So on the north parking, we've got approximately about 220 parking stalls for public. We've incorporated the Osage orange tree in our design so that it is incorporated and stays as part of what the site currently has. We've created a secure access both for partial staff as well as for deliveries and other facilities that need to come and maintain the facility. So we've created that secure access point to the building, minimizing, again, to your point, the security here or maximizing the security to the building. So the courthouse site creates that plaza space that allows for public to be able to come to the space, to use that space, whether that's for gathering, for speaking, for events, what that may be over time as programs continue to move forward. But it also sets the stage for the courthouse itself. In that same plaza space, we've created ramps and ADA access to the building in these areas, so that allows for access right off of City Hall and then into the plaza area and then off into the building. We've created a secure barrier as it goes around the building, and that barrier is not a barrier that's continuous per se so that it creates this blockade. It's a barrier that is used both with bollards, seat walls, Kansas limestone boulders, and some screen walls. We've done this in a fashion that works and integrates with the architecture of the building itself, so it doesn't become a barrier that people don't want to approach the building, but a barrier that creates the security that's needed around a building of this type. On that slide, though, there were a couple other items. Nope, you're fine. We do plan to have public engagement in 2019 for the county square, and there will be some other upcoming items as we go forward from the demolition of the courthouse itself as well. So the other piece that we've paid close attention to on this project is accessibility. And that accessibility is for all people that come to the building. We've continued to work with the City ADA Advisory Council. We've met with them a handful of times to work through the building and understand better, not just those that are in a wheelchair, but any and all people that may have a disability, how they're going to work with it or come within the building, use the building, and how do we make sure we incorporate their needs and make sure they can use the building appropriately. So we've created outside ramps to provide that access into the one public entry or one entry that we have. We've created some automatic doors in some of the public areas so that, for instance, on the public restrooms, that gives the ability for anybody to use those, but for those that need that, have that disability, can come and actually open those doors automatically and go into the public restrooms. So we've tried to incorporate some of those things in the public areas to give better access. The other thing we've done is, and Brian will talk a little bit about this in the public corridor space, is we've created a really nice wide corridor space that allows for people to be able to move. One of the other pieces, as we've talked to the those that with the ADA Council, is the fact that many times when you come to this building, you may have a distress, you may be a little anxious. So how do we create spaces that allow for some calming? And to create that corridor in a width fashion that allows them to move freely through that space with other people is a very important aspect of what we're trying to do. We've also included audio and visual items throughout the building. We've incorporated fully accessible courtrooms, so all courtrooms will be accessible. We've incorporated audio loop systems within those spaces for the hearing impaired, so again, giving as much ability for everybody to use this building. And then wayfinding. So you can put a sign on the wall, you can put a sign in a lot of places to be able to see, but we want to actually create wayfinding that allows people to know where they need to go, not have the anxiousness of not knowing where to go. So we have some kiosks and some other wayfinding items throughout the building that are electronic that allow for those people to know where they need to go, get to the places they're going to, and move through the building.
question,
Mr.
please?
Ashcraft.
Yes, a follow-on to your wayfinding issue, and I commend you for that. Will there also be an effort to do a wayfinding effort for the entire downtown campus? Because today, people come into this building looking for what's not in this building, and I'm just wondering if that'll be included in that, coordinating with the city, the school district, and whatever, the signage. If you're not from around here, can be a bit challenging. So this is an important cornerstone. I just was wondering if that was included.
So we've been in some discussions with the city and looking at their vision plan that they currently have and working with facilities to determine what's the best way to do that, both downtown area as well as throughout the area adjacent to the courthouse itself. So we don't have a plan and a strategy yet, but we are looking at that and discussing it across the board.
Very good. I'm glad to hear it, because sometimes different organizations have different concepts, and for somebody who comes in, it's like, well, is this wayfinding? Is this wayfinding? And they don't necessarily make an easy connection. So thank you.
I'd agree. And to that, so that's one reason why when the commissioner asked about signage as it related to the west side of the courthouse, we've actually had a lot of discussion on where the signage needs to be so that it allows for people to know where they need to park and where the building is. So we're working through that collectively.
Okay, thank you. Next.
As Brad mentioned, this building is challenged to be a 75-plus year high-performance building. So how do we do that? First off, we created a concrete structure for this building. A concrete structure, as many of you know, have been around for a long period of time, longer than 75 years to date in many, many buildings. So we wanted to create that structure that gives some flexibility, but it also gives permanence to the building itself. As I talked about a little bit in the overall exemplary civic building, we talked about materials. So we wanted to use durable and low maintenance type materials on this project. So we've used the Kansas limestone that I mentioned earlier. We also have used an architectural precast, so it's a concrete-based product. We've used architectural metal panels, and then we've also used a high-performance glass. And that high-performance glass is going to do a lot of different things for us. We've got a great U value for that, low E value to that as well, which now allows us to have a great energy-efficient systems and energy-efficient building. So those are the things, as Brad was talking a little bit about best designs as it relates to LEED standards. Those are the types of things that we're looking at as we look at materials and look at the design of this building to give it a 75-year building. So we've created energy-efficient mechanical systems, plumbing systems, electrical systems, and lighting. As many of you may think about some of the buildings you've seen over the years that have the fluorescent bulbs, today we're using LED. We don't know what it's going to be next year, or the next 15 years, what that energy efficient item will be, but we want to create that flexibility within the 75-year building. So we've done some of those things as well to allow for the expansion of something else that may come down the road. We've also looked at audiovisual and other areas as it relates to how this building is going to perform over the next 75 years and providing the infrastructure for that. We've done energy modeling as a design build team. And that energy modeling today shows that we're at about 30% better than ASHRAE 90.1. And you may look and go, well, what's ASHRAE 90.1? ASHRAE 90.1 is a standard for measurement of mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems within a building and the overall building energy efficiency. And it's a code requirement item to be able to do that. We're actually doing over 30% better than that. And to give you kind of a general idea of what that is as it relates to something else, an office building that's built today may be more or less 10 to 15% better than ASHRAE 90.1. So we feel pretty good that we're doing some great things with this building. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Brian Chafee with Fentress, who's going to talk a little bit more about the design and the overall building itself.
Thank you, Jeff. And what I'm going to do is describe basically how the building has been organized internally. And then we're going to complete this design presentation with a video that will walk you through the actual design as it exists. So this diagram that you see on your screen really demonstrates that the building is consisting of really two kind of major components, which we refer to as the tower, the courtroom tower, and also the podium, or the Emporium of Justice. The courtroom tower itself, really, the court floors consist of floors 4 through 7, and those floors accommodate 24 of the 28 courtrooms that Brad had mentioned. The district attorney is on level 3. In the long distant future, when more courtrooms are needed, that space can be incrementally converted to courtrooms as the need arises. And then the first and second floors are really what has become termed the Emporium of Justice. And this is basically the instrument of justice, but also the real customer service-oriented aspect to the building. This is where a lot of the publicly accessible items, or those departments who require the most public access, are located. So it'd be very easy for the public to use. Those are functions like the high-capacity courtroom and the high-volume courtrooms that we've talked about. Jury assembly space, which of course takes big jury calls and a lot of people, so that's conveniently located in this podium space. And on the first floor, the clerk of court, the hearing rooms, and the help center, importantly, and we'll talk about those a little bit more as we go as well. But you can see from this diagram that the building design has really, I'd say, evolved out of the synthesis of both this internal organization of the building, based on the county's criteria documents, and also the external influences of the site to create this interesting form and an expression of the functions that take place within. And I'm going to talk a little bit also about the idea of integrating art into our civic buildings. This is, the integration of art is one of the elements that, that helps define civic buildings. And so the county, to their credit, has allocated funds for the provision of civic art in this process. And through the Public Art Commission had put out a call to artists. I think 130 artists responded with their expressions of interest to be considered for commission for art in the building. From that 130, the commission culled it down to 5 artists who were invited to participate in an interview and share some of their ideas about what they might do for the building, for the art in the building. And out of that emerged the artist Benjamin Ball. And he's an artist that just out of pure circumstance our firm has worked with before and we've collaborated with before. And so that's how we started this process, is really collaborating with him. We identified many sites around the building and in the building that might be considered for suitable locations for the art. And then collectively, the team arrived at a prominent entry location, which I'll show you here in a moment, for provision of his art. But the key is that the process has integrated the art with the architecture. After Benjamin was commissioned, he had conducted research about what would be an appropriate approach to art for the project. And he made us aware of this work, and I'm sure people that are in this area are familiar with the work of Thomas Hart Benton. He's a beautiful artist that is an American master and deals in regional art. You may know his installations from places like the Missouri State House and the Truman Library. So he's been equated with civic architecture in those installations in those locations. I think what drew Benjamin to him is the beautiful, as you can see in this image, beautiful, vibrant colors in his art and the very flowing lines that are represented by his art. And I think, so Benjamin has sort of taken that as a point of departure in the proposal for art for this building.
Could you pull the microphone just a little closer to?
Sure. Is that better? Okay. This is an example of an installation and project for Benjamin's work. This is as it's being installed, and I guess I best characterize his work as multicolored stainless steel ball chains, which he arrays in a really interesting layering of hundreds and hundreds of strands of these ball chains in close proximity, literally probably miles of lengths of these ball chains, which he then hoists. As you can see in this image, this catenary cable is hoisting one end of a whole series of those chains into place. And then eventually the other end of this will be hoisted into place. And the net result is this creates a three-dimensional kind of a sculptural approach to the art, which is very colorful, dynamic, and very interesting from multiple points of vantage. Benjamin has described his own work as basically alternatively a hard-edged geometric form or a blur or a vapor-like composition. So it's certainly a three-dimensional artistic sculpture, but very dynamic in its execution. So the location that we have selected is the entry, the primary entry at the south end of the building, directly adjacent to the raised plaza off Santa Fe. And it's really a location that everybody will experience whether they're using the building or not, whether they're inside the building or outside the building. And it's here in this weather vestibule, as you can see this night depiction of it, and you can kind of get the sense of the obviously vibrant colors, flowy nature of the piece. And as everybody enters the building, they enter underneath this through the vestibule. This next image shows that in the daytime, which also I think, you might think of this as kind of a three-dimensional modern-day version of Thomas Hart Benton and his civic architecture, or civic art and architecture. So looking at the diagram, this is a plan diagram of the portion of the entry sequence, the arrival and entry sequence. What you see in the red dot there is this art location, so that people who enter through the south entry enter, as I mentioned, directly below it and experience it as they enter the building. The entry itself, this is the beginning of the separation of three circulation systems. The courthouse is, in order to be safe and secure and correct some of the failings of the existing courthouse, has three separate circulation systems. Those three circulation systems are the circulation path for the judiciary, for the inmates, and for the public. This is the public entrance. The judiciary and the inmates each have their separate, discrete entrances to the building, which starts them on the path of circulation to ultimately convening in the courtrooms where their case is being heard. But for the public, there is ample queuing, as you can see here, and there's an entry that comes from the north parking lot and from the south. So they join at the queuing area and at the security checkpoints. There's 2 security checkpoints in the plan now, with the provision to add a third one as needed to accommodate the expansion that we've been talking about. Immediately upon exiting the security checkpoint, you'd be standing there in the Emporium of Justice in full view of those functions that I described that are most necessary to be seen upon entry. This diagram shows just those: the help center, the clerk of the court, and hearing rooms on the first level. And then the second level, the high volume courtrooms, you can think of that as, for example, traffic courts, and the high capacity courts. And importantly, the jury assembly space, where a lot of people come to provide their civic duty. They want to have an easy way to get there and have it be a facility that they can actually do some work while they're waiting to be called for jury. So these functions are arrayed around a 2-story lobby space that collectively we've termed the Emporium of Justice.
Let me clarify. You show 2 entries, but there really is only one entry for the public, and that's the south. Is that right?
There's one point of secure checkpoints.
Right.
But there are two places for people to funnel into that secure checkpoint so that they're undercover in a queued area, out of the weather, and in an enclosed environment.
Right.
So that's to accommodate people walking from the north if they happen to have parked at the north, or coming from the south if they might have parked at Chestnut Garage, for example.
Thank you.
So this is a planning diagram for the typical courts floor or typical tower floor. On the left shows the diagram indicating these 3 separate security systems, circulation systems that I mentioned. Yellow depicts the public courtroom, or the public circulation, rather. Blue depicts the judicial circulation, and red depicts the inmate circulation as they rise up through the building. And they all convene only once they're in a courtroom, where they're in a controlled environment of the courtroom with the presence of the judge and security officers. The diagram on the right shows how that diagram has translated into the actual plan of the building, showing the judicial chambers, their staff, jury deliberation rooms, the courtrooms, of course, there in gray, and then the public circulation in yellow. There are 3 sets of this pair of courtrooms on every typical courtroom, or every court floor. So that means 6 courtrooms per floor on those upper court
Okay, Mr.
floors.
Clicker, you have.
Mr. Chairman, I need to depart to head to another meeting here for the afternoons here, but I did want to make a comment here. I had the opportunity to visit with Dan quite a bit on this. I think the direction that's being taken is extremely positive. I really like it. And obviously, you know, I've been a strong cheerleader in this project. The one comment I do want to make is to go back to the art side. I know the issue of art and how we deal with it from the county standpoint and how we have handled it in the past. I think this sets a very good example of how we should handle art with our facilities, where it's incorporated early on in the design phase and that it's incorporated throughout the theme of the building. I do have one question relative to that. While I see the beautiful art and what it's depicting and whatever, and I'm going to be honest, I'm not a real art type of connoisseur or anything like this. But that theme is being carried on through the rest of the building. Is that correct? Through the paint colors, through the design of the floors and all of that? Is that a fair assumption?
Well, I think that the art is, since it's so vibrant in its colors, it stands a little bit on its own so that it really draws attention to itself. But we are incorporating a very cohesive set of color palettes throughout the building. Bringing materials from the outside to the in so that there's
Because that's my argument with art. It's all incorporated in the whole theme and what's going on and everything it does. So it should be holding together all the way through that building as someone walks through it. So, but that I do want to comment. I appreciate all the folks who are involved in that part of the process, and to see the results is great. But thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Continue, please.
So I was just concluding with that's basically 6 courtrooms per floor. This is a rendering of the public lobby, which is where most public will interface with the courtrooms. Gives you a sense of the character of that space and the very subtle curve as that corridor curves around to the right. I think what's immediately evident here is a real strong sense of where the courtroom entrances are. This aids in wayfinding for the public. Clearly noted the courtroom numbers and how they get there. The black square that you see on the wall there, just to the left of this first courtroom entrance, is another element in the wayfinding system and strategy. It's called an electronic docket monitor, and it's a dynamic visual display. Think of it like the airport terminal, the flight information display systems. So it can be remotely programmed and updated to indicate to people what the docket schedule is for that particular courtroom. There's one of these outside of each courtroom, so they each can maintain and communicate their separate dockets. I think other features of this space indicate, as you can see there, ample seating and of course daylighting, and the whole idea of well building and the studies that have proven how much daylighting helps human performance and comfort. This entire corridor is going to be washed in daylight through that high-performing glass that Jeff was talking about. And we also use that daylight, as you can see here in the kind of horizontal window, to illuminate or to help daylight multi-purpose conference rooms that are adjacent to the courtroom entry itself. And then you can't quite see it here, but at the very high ceiling, you can see a slot, and daylight goes across that and into the courtrooms themselves as well. So there will be daylit courtrooms on the project.
Just a question. I may not have understood what Commissioner Klicka was asking, but the color palette in this slide, is that what you envision, or will it somehow tie to the artwork as Mr. Klicka was expressing? I just wasn't clear on what you were saying versus what he was saying.
Sure. We don't expect that we'll be using as vibrant colors in the interior finishes throughout the courthouse. We think that needs to be concentrated in the area where the art is.
So this palette that's on slide 21, you think is fairly representative of what you envisioned?
This is closer, and yes, this is more like what we are envisioning. There are still some tweaks about the actual pattern of the material and tweaking of tones of colors of the carpet, for example.
Okay. And white walls or?
Right. It's a lighter palette, I would say. Okay. Other than the wood, which you see a detail of in the bench here and at the courtroom entry doors, that's a really warming kind of a material that is, and of course, a traditional courthouse material as well.
Mr. Reinhardt's maintenance folks are good with this.
Yes, we've been reviewing all aspects of the building for maintainability, so absolutely.
The facilities staff has been involved in all our workshops and all our meetings and have provided input all along the way.
Okay. Please continue.
Okay, thank you. So as we walk into as we look at the courtroom itself, the courtrooms are, of course, really the basic DNA of a courthouse, and they have to be designed very carefully to be functional to all their varied needs. So one way we do that is to create full-scale courtroom mock-ups. These are some examples of these are some photographs of a courtroom mock-up that was built earlier this year. And the real purpose of this is to validate the design, make sure that the sight lines are correct, the witness can be seen by the jury, that type of thing, that the audio-visual is integrated in appropriate ways. Fairly, discrete ways, but appropriate ways, and to make sure that we have ADA compliance. So we have a time-lapse video of that courtroom mock-up, and as it cues up here, it's basically, as I said, a full-scale mock-up. People can sit at it, use it, and the process is to see if there's any tweaks to be made, and actually make them in the mock-up and test them, and also test the different courtroom configurations. This is a corner bench, but there are also center bench configurations and non-jury courtrooms. And the goal is to really, as I said, validate the courtroom functional design. This image shows that material palette, again, the use of wood in a much bigger way once you get inside the courtroom. This helps direct attention and importance to the front of the courtroom, to the bench area itself. But we've also brought in some of the Kansas limestone that Jeff referred to on the ribbon wall, as we call it, outside the building, and brought those materials in, so it's really an integrated palette from inside and out. So finally, we're gonna, I'll walk you through this video animation of the design, and this should bring it all together for you. You can see the ribbon window, or the ribbon wall there, and Cherry Street Plaza. Here's the south of the building, showing the entrance there to the right. And then as it pans around and moves north on Kansas, this side of the building, in the architectural precast concrete there, houses the offices of the judiciary. The glass element there is an expression of the jury deliberation suites. And then moving down Cherry Street from north to south, you can see the subtle curve of the corridor and the ability to put glass in. The element that Jeff described is inspired by history and culture of Kansas, limestone, ribbon wall. at this shows a snack break area that's accessible by the public and by staff, and it has an outdoor terrace that's adjacent to it. Now, walking back down, you can see there's a skylight to bring, again, a prominent theme is to bring daylight into the building here in front of the high-capacity courtrooms, and help guide the public to the skylight spot. Looks back out over the two-story open space I described. The elevator lobby is just easily accessible from the Board of Justice in the lobby. This is as one would walk out on a typical courtroom floor. The corridor that we've been describing and the courtrooms to the right. Very friendly feel to it. This looks into the courtroom itself, which is as the rendering was that I showed. I'm walking back out of the elevators onto the first floor. And this will pan around that glassy corner is the law library. Here to the left is the clerk of court counter, publicly accessible. And to the left of that is the help center where people can come in and actually do research and be helped with their issues as need be. And these are all spaces that are very publicly accessible and close to the entrance. So there's not the burden of moving this volume of people up through the building, and it's easy for people to find. Very simply on the other end, a view back from Santa Fe and Cherry once again. So that's the conclusion of the design portion of the presentation. I think at this point I'm going to turn it over to.
Let me ask, I have a couple of questions. One of the, one of the issues, and you didn't specify this, but I know it's in there, which needs to be spoken to, was the fact that victims currently may meet their perpetrators in the hallways. It's my understanding there are areas where victims can be located prior to going into the courtroom, and that there are also spaces for attorneys to visit with their clients. Is that correct?
That's correct. I called it a multi-purpose courtroom when we were looking at the courtroom corridor image where the glass brings daylight in, but those are used for victim witness, kind of isolation places before they are called to testify, for example. Attorneys and clients use them to consult with one another, and so there's a whole variety of if there's separation issues, as you described, they can be accommodated in those rooms.
Very good. Well, I wanted to make special note of that because that was one of the issues that had been, considered almost from the get-go. So,
correct.
Thank you.
So I'll turn it over, if there are no other questions at the moment, I'll turn it over. Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, Mr. Ashcraft.
Just, and maybe you're going to get to this, but the current facility has a number of, I'll call them historical artifacts kind of in the entryway. That will somehow be incorporated, or I hope it will be incorporated in the new facility in part or in its entirety. And by extension, there had been conversation about some of the materials in the current courthouse and trying to salvage some of those. And I had raised this issue with Mr. Reinhardt previously. There was a Dr. Green's house that had a lot of woodwork, and I don't know if you're at that point in your planning yet, but trying to salvage some of those historical components and incorporate them in. So is that forthcoming, or have you gotten to that point yet?
We haven't really completed that conversation. We have started it and begun to brainstorm how we might do that. In fact, even this morning, we're talking about, is there a way to reuse the marble from inside the courtroom?
I've heard that comment before, yeah.
You know what, so there's certainly considerations. There's a timing issue that we have to deal with too, because the existing courthouse will obviously be operational until the day the new one opens. And so it almost has to be
Fair point.
something where the material can come after the new building is open and operational.
So to that point, the artwork that's included, that's the entire expenditure. There won't be any funds for moving existing components into the new facility. That would be part of the actual construction cost, not part of the artwork cost.
I'll let Brad address the issue of cost, but there are some other ideas that we had that I'll share with you that have to do with bringing some of that history forward in the form of areas where we have set up for displays.
Okay. Yeah.
And whether it's actually integrated into the actual building materials or not, certainly we can honor that with
That can
a
be a bit of a gray area, I suppose, but I've just, the amount on artwork is basically that entry-level piece. There won't be much of anything else in terms of artwork.
Correct. We have a public art budget line item in the overall project authorization, and that line item will be used for the public art component. We may not spend all of that, and so at that point, possibly those funds could be used for some of these other items as well. But we have funds in the budget for doing the things you're speaking of with the other artifacts and.
But the artwork is a $500,000. You may not spend all of that.
Correct.
You don't have a firm bid yet.
Don't have a number at this point in time.
Thank you.
Brown. So you're presenting the artwork, but we don't know what it costs yet?
Accurate? Well, yeah, I guess I don't know the exact final cost of it at this point. So I don't, the design team's been working with the artist, so they may have better information than I do.
I think the thing that I would say about the artwork is we were given a dollar amount, and we've been working with Benjamin Ball to make sure that it fits within that dollar amount. If that dollar amount is not fully utilized, then at that point it would come back and have that ability, I guess. I don't know how that funding works, but we would have that ability. So we've been working with Benjamin Ball as a team to make sure that the art is integrated within the building, and the dollars he's well aware of, so that is integrated within what we're talking to him about.
So this is going to be a $500,000 piece of art. Is that fair? If he knows the number, he knows what we got. That's where we're headed.
That's the max.
I mean, that's,
Yep.
okay.
Mr. Allen?
Just a quick follow-up to Commissioner Ashcraft's comments about reusing some of the material in the courtrooms. Maybe, to me, it would seem logical maybe that the courtrooms that are not finished is maybe because timing issue, I clearly would understand, but the possibility maybe would be to put some of that material in or save back when those rooms are finished out. But I think it would be important if possible and economically practical that if we could reuse some of that in the new courthouse, I think it would be a worthy goal.
That sounds great.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Mr. Brown?
Back to the artwork. What's the plan for cleaning it? How does that work on an ongoing basis? And is the color on this paint, or is this light that's providing the color?
Brian, I'm gonna let you talk about the art.
Sure, it's paint. It's basically, and it will be lit as well, as you saw in the nighttime photograph. So the lighting will reveal the colors of it at night in particular. But it's inherently integrally colored. These chains are integrally colored. As far as dust, there's not really any surface for the dust to collect on. These chains are hanging in, as I mentioned, in close proximity. And so they move a little bit, and it's a little bit dynamic. And so it doesn't have a horizontal surface per se for dust to collect onto.
I don't know how dust doesn't collect on that, but that'll be interesting to see over time. Thank you.
Yes.
My eye for art is a little clouded, but on a very miniature basis, the Overland Park Convention Center at the southwest corner has a display of hanging glass. I'll describe it that way, which is very colorful, very attractive, and is viewed from the outside or street level. Again, nothing compared to what you're talking about, but it can be done very, very effectively and is very, very attractive. So,
Chairman?
Yeah.
I just have one more question. That doesn't have anything to do with art. This is on a different topic, but as we went through the visual, we showed a break room, but I didn't see any indication of vending or kitchen facilities or dining preparation. What is the plan for that at this point?
So currently, we have vending in that space, so we'll be vending there. There's also a warming kitchen for catering purposes. So that's the intent of what we're trying to do and the strategy within the building itself currently.
There won't be any food preparation on site, is that
Correct.
accurate?
Correct.
Okay.
You'll have to bring everything to and either warm it or set it up.
All right. Okay, continue, please.
So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Kyle McQuistion to talk about the bidding and construction process.
Thank you. As Brad said, we are within project budget, and we wanted to highlight the bidding process a little bit just to explain how we've been able to do that with this design. First of all, I want to acknowledge participation with facilities, with the county, with the design team and contractors and our trade partners. For about 6 weeks, over 100 people spent all or most of their time with this process to work through to maintain the final pricing. One of the things that we were concerned about was the current construction market and how busy it is and our availability to get competitive pricing. Currently, I went back and looked in some documents that we generate on the, we call major projects in the city. Currently, there are about 11 major projects, and those are 100 million or more. And so with that amount of volume, there's about $2 billion worth of work that'll take place over the time frame of this project. And so we were concerned about getting competitive pricing, but for 13 scopes, we took bids from 39 different companies. And so we felt like we had good coverage, we had good competitive pricing, and we had a good process after the bidding that we worked through some refinements in the design as well as maintaining a lid on the pricing. Trade partner input is an important part of that, and a couple examples of what happened throughout that process. One example was on the ribbon wall that Brian talked about. There was an alternate system to support it. It didn't change the effect of the wall, it didn't change the look or the feel or the texture, but the way it was connected to the building, there was an alternate system that a subcontractor brought forward. We were able to save a considerable amount of money by using that new system. Another example, our trade partner that's doing the acoustic plaster work inside the building brought forth a new product, and we're able to incorporate it into the project, and it's going to save a considerable amount of money as well. So a healthy process, a lot of people involved, a lot of time was spent. We worked through many different issues, and we're able to maintain the budget.
Question, please. And I commend you for finding cost-effective alternatives. Are you including life cycle costing for these products over 75 years? If it's a new product, will it hold up the same? And what kind of guarantees do we have that in 25 years we're not fussing at Brad because the walls are falling down? And I'm sure Brad will have an answer for that.
I'll start that. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to bring forward an example, the HVAC systems. You know, in selecting the system we're going to go with, we looked at first cost, maintenance costs, replacement costs at the appropriate time in their life cycle. So yes, we have been looking at the life cycle cost of these systems.
But I was referring specifically to the changes that Mr. McQuiston.
Oh, the changes wouldn't impact that at all. those changes are all, they fit within the project goals.
Let me, I'd like, to, again, I don't like to tag on, but I think that to your point, Commissioner, we as a team looked at all the materials and these items that came forward from the trade partners to validate that they matched up with the same quality and the same products that we were already specifying. So as a design team and design build team, we did that collectively together to make sure that we don't have those issues going forward. So that we matched up the same quality.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's the bidding process and the budget piece. I want to talk a little bit about the schedule, where we stand. Looking backwards, on July 5th, we've got approval for the first phase of the work. And January 12th, you'll remember, we had groundbreaking and we had begun to do some early dirt work. July 13th, we started construction, and that work included foundation work, all the mass excavation for the site, deep foundation piers will be completed this week. Exterior walls for the basement are about 60% complete, and there is some slab on grade in the basement that's been completed. And so what that early release did was it enabled us to progress with design that wasn't going to change, and it allowed the rest of the design to continue to be developed, to be released in this second GMP approval that is defined in our words as core and shell. So it'll be the structure to the roof, it'll be the enclosure, it'll be the systems inside the building, and the final step then, while that work is happening, design will be completed on all the interior finish details that'll enable that work then to follow on appropriately. All of that being said, the schedule is laid out to finish the topping out the structure in 2019, and then the building will be enclosed shortly after. We'll chase the structure up and have the roof completed and enable the interior finishes to take place. All of that supports a completion and substantial completion and turnover in August of 2020, which enables the county then to transition from the old courthouse to the new courthouse in the last quarter of 2020. And that's earlier than what we originally were told and originally proposed. So we've picked up some time with those early approvals and that early work that we've all done. So,
could you refresh my memory? GMP stands for?
Guaranteed maximum price.
Thank you.
Sorry about the acronyms. So that's just a quick overview of the schedule and what's taken place.
Okay, very good.
One last slide, just to review some next steps associated with this project. In 2 weeks, we'll be coming forward to the Public Building Commission requesting approval of the GMP contract amendment with J. Dunn to complete the design and construction for the project. In 2019, we'll be coming to the board for an authorization increase in our furniture term and supply so that we can begin the procurement process for furnishings and furniture of the new courthouse. Again, we've talked about this previously. Public engagement will continue specifically around the Johnson County Square once the current courthouse is demolished, and will be open in January of 2021. And that will then be followed quickly by the demolition and work on the square. So,
I know the Courthouse Square project is down the road. One thing that I've had conversations with members of our African-American community, this particular courthouse, or the existing courthouse, is located close to the first African-American neighborhood in Olathe, the Fairview neighborhood. And there have been some questions about, might there be an opportunity to recognize Martin Luther King, for instance, and other historic aspects of that African-American neighborhood. I know years past, and Mr. Brown, I know you've been working on perhaps a veterans project. So early conversation, but I'd like to see those kind of items included in that courthouse square.
Well, and that is exactly the intent of the public engagement, but we will absolutely, pursue those types of ideas and receive those types of ideas and see what we can do to incorporate them.
Okay.
Certainly.
All right. Other questions? All right, well, thank you very much, and we'll see you back in 2 weeks, is that right?
Correct.
So we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.